Good morning, everybody. I don't know about you, but that sun, when I got out this morning, it's a little chilly. I will say, it's March. I'm like, okay, I want a little more warmth now. I don't know about you, but the snow can go, and I'd like some spring. Thank you very much. But the sun, I was out, and I'm like, oh, if it wasn't so cold, I'd just stand out here in the sun. Anyways, what an interesting story. I like interesting stories. This story has a lot for us. Okay, and I'm just getting to this story has a lot for us if you look at it. Okay, can someone else get me another music stand? This one's not going to quite hold. Um, if you look at the story, what do we have? Well, we have a well-known, thank you very much, we have a well-known preacher of the gospel, Philip. And at this time in the church's history, this was just not that long after they had stoned Stephen, not Philip, sorry. They had stoned Stephen. So being a well-known preacher of the way was not necessarily a safe job to have. There were some occupational hazards, like the government and wanted to arrest you and possibly kill you if you continued doing your work. So we have Philip. He receives a summons from God saying, go this way, go south to Caesarea. And we know that was a particular, not south to Caesarea, I'm sorry, but he was to go south. I forget the name of the town right now. And he had to pass through, the most direct way was to pass through Jerusalem. Now, you could have gone around Jerusalem, but the road that he was told to go on was through Jerusalem. And that was the government people who were trying to kill the people of the way. So a well-known preacher who was known by the authorities has now been sent by God to go through the very town that just stoned Stephen. Well, that's getting kind of an exciting story. And then we have an exotic foreigner. This is not somebody you would meet every day. He was an Ethiopian eunuch. He was representative of his government, so he probably would have been quite well dressed, but people would have known he was a eunuch, so that's very exotic. After they meet, they spend an afternoon. This eunuch gives his heart to God, gives his heart to Jesus, and is baptized. And as soon as that happens, Philip is spirited away to a town a ways away, and he starts spreading the gospel there. So this, I don't know about you, but when I read this story, I'm like, wow, this could make a really cool Hollywood movie. You've got lots of dramatic elements here that could be really awesome to look at the screen and see. When I was reading through this story and going through the guide that we have to study about this, some thoughts came to my mind. Have you ever been asked by God to go somewhere? Philip was. How about if it was somewhere you didn't want to go? Or maybe someplace that might be a little dangerous to go. That's what happened to Philip. Matthew 28:19 and 20 says, "Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always to the end of the age." This is one of those scriptures that really has spoken to me from a very young age. When I entered into college at CUC, and yes, I'm going to call it Canadian Union College because that's what it was when I was there, they had student missionaries, and you would go for a year to a country you didn't know. It was quite exotic, and you would do things. So I went to a place I had not a clue. I went to the Marshall Islands, and I taught grade 6. I was second year of college. In fact, I was 20 years old. I had never lived away from home before. My parents agreed that I could go because, in their words, they didn't think I was going to follow through. In fact, as I started to prepare, I had to raise money to buy my ticket to go. They actually helped out. They helped out with the fundraising and all the things together. And then about 2 weeks before I was going to leave home, my father dawned on him, and he left the house immediately, went in the car and went and bought me a nice big trunk to pack my stuff in, because he said, all of a sudden, you're leaving. This is really going to happen. We are called to go and make disciples, to go and teach all nations, every person, to go and baptize. One of the things about making disciples that I am learning more about is when you make a disciple, you're entering into a relationship with them. It's not like I talk to you and I say hello and how's it going. No, a disciple actually was someone who would go and insert themselves into the lives of the person that they were learning from. So they were invited into their inner circle. They would live with them, sleep with them, eat with them, travel with them, help them. And when you had a disciple, your contract kind of with that disciple was you're working to make them so that they can replace you. But that's a very strong, intimate kind of relationship. There have been, besides going to the Marshall Islands, there have been in my life, two times that have been recent where I've been asked to go places where I wouldn't have ever thought to go and didn't really want to go. When we came back from Bangkok, Thailand, I didn't have a job. I was looking to maybe go work at McDonald's or someplace just to make some money for my family. And about a week before school started, I got a call from the BC conference. I had met Lloyd, who was the superintendent at the time, and he said, "Hey, I really need a teacher in Chetwynd. Could you go for a year? I mean, school's about to start and we don't have anybody and we really need someone and there is nobody that will go to Chetwynd for a year. Would you be willing to go to Chetwynd?" Now, how many people know where Chetwynd is? And I know in this church there are some people who were used to live and were from Chetwynd. I didn't know Chetwynd. When I looked on the map, I said, okay, I'd be interested because you need to support your family. It was up north. It's away from it's remote, really. There's not a lot up there. And I'm like, really? This is where you want me to go, God? So I went and looked at it, and they asked me to stay for the year, and I taught. And actually, even though it wasn't my choice to go, I really learned a lot there. I enjoyed my time there. One of the things I learned in Chetwynd was people in Chetwynd, they help people. When you're up north and you're in the remote districts, if somebody needs something, they don't ask. You just go and help. You see someone on the side of the road, you stop and you help them because it could be life and death. If it's really cold, -40, and your car breaks down on the side of the road, you could die because there isn't any place round. So you stop and help people. And so people just help. It was wonderful. It was actually a really valuable lesson. And I was there for a year. Well, then after a year, where am I going to go? And I looked at a couple jobs, actually was flown out for a couple of interviews, and there wasn't anything. And my wife will remember this. We got called to go to Bella Coola. Now, I didn't really know where Chetwynd was. I didn't know where Bella Coola was. But what I did know about Bella Coola is they had an academy there at one time. It was a boarding academy, and that was where you sent the bad kids. That was where troubled teenagers were sent. This isn't someplace that I'm taking my two children, grades 4 and 5, and my wife, and this is where I'm going. I had no idea what to expect. I had no idea what it looked like. I had no idea about the road out there and the hill. And so my wife and my two boys and I, and we got in, they rented us a car and we drove out. Lloyd wanted us to drive out there so we could really see what it was and experience this. And so we drove out there. And we got down there, and they had put us in the hotel downtown. And we went to the grocery store to get some groceries so we could do some breakfast and stuff like that in the hotel room and save a little money. And we went to the main grocery store there, and my wife was looking around and saying, okay, if this is the place we're going to live, this is where I'm going to shop for food. This is where I get the stuff to feed my family. And as we were going through and looking, she came to the soup aisle, which probably isn't an accurate description. It was maybe this wide, dear, maybe a little bit wider, this wide on the aisle, and 3 or 4 shelves this wide of soup. Now, I looked up. I didn't have a problem with this. I looked up there. Okay, there's a couple soups I like. I'm good. But my wife, she takes a look at. This is all she sees. I mean, she's used to shopping in grocery stores where you have soup aisle. And is this? And she burst into tears. Because this is, how do you get stuff for your family? This is really remote. But in Bella Coola, God taught me how to lead. God helped me mature my teaching. And after moving around and being overseas, this was a place my boys could go and be boys. I didn't have to worry about them going out and running around all over the place. My son Davey would get on his bike and grab his fishing pole and be gone for 6 hours fishing. Occasionally he would come back and tell us stories several days later about he was fishing, and about as far away from me as to Lisa, there was a grizzly bear on the stump that right next to him. He didn't tell us this at the time. He told us this actually in a children's story at church. It's when we heard about that. But this is a place where they feel like it's home and they were a safe place to grow up. It was wonderful. It was life-changing, but it wasn't a place I would have chosen to go. Now, God has never asked me to go somewhere as dangerous as he did Philip. And I don't know if he's asked you to go somewhere that might be as dangerous as he did Philip. The story of Philip and the Ethiopian eunuch took place, as I said, shortly after the stoning of Stephen. Stephen was stoned in Jerusalem. The government authorities in Jerusalem considered followers of the way to be radical and dangerous to society. When I read that and I thought about that, I was thinking, who would that be nowadays? And you know what came to mind? Islamic people. How would we react if an Islamic preacher, an imam, or several of them came to Williams Lake, came to BC, and started going around preaching the message from Islam and converting people to different culture, different religion, different way of life? We, at least I can't speak for you, but when I hear that, if that was happening, I would think, okay, we're going to have terrorists among us. Islamic people, that's the terrorists. They're going to blow up the buildings. They're going to kill people. They chop off the heads off of Christians. So I think that the followers of the way at the time were seen by the authorities and by people in the same kind of light. They were changing the religion, they were changing family structures, they were changing the culture. They were going out and radically changing society. And they were seen as disruptive and as dangerous as we might view somebody from Islam coming here and spreading the message of Islam. Wow. I'm not sure how I would feel also if I, as a Christian, if I was a Christian preacher and I was sent to an Islamic country. Because you can be arrested and in some cases killed for trying to make people disciples. And that's what Philip was asked to do. That's Philip. I'm telling you this to give you the idea of what Philip was really facing. Now, wisdom to me would suggest I'm not going to go through Jerusalem where I could be arrested and possibly tried and killed. I'm going to go around Jerusalem where it's safer and then come out on the other side. It might take me a little bit longer, but then I'm safer. That would make sense to me. But that's not what God asked Philip to do. And if we read the story, that's not what Philip did. That's kind of amazing to me. Another aspect of the story that kind of struck me was who Philip was sent to. Now, we hear Ethiopian eunuch. When I read Ethiopian eunuch, I think of a guy in robes. The eunuch part doesn't really stand out too much to me because we don't have eunuchs as much today around us. But back then, if you were a slave boy working for your master, you could be made a eunuch. And why would they make you a eunuch? Because then you're more trustworthy. You're not going to have offspring, so there is no, your place of safety in society would be to serve your master. This is where you could actually do your work. Because society looked at eunuchs as subhuman. They were not real men. They could not have children, so they did not have value in society. So if you couldn't live in society, you could live in your master's house and you could serve them, and they would often have very comfortable lives and have a measure of a life within their master's household. But outside, they couldn't. And the common man and woman would be us. If you saw a eunuch, you would have looked at them with a little bit of distrust, a little bit weird. This is not someone I want to associate with because, this is not a normal person. This is not a whole person. They can't have children. That was important. When I looked at that in the story, I thought, who might these people be from the story? Who might these people be in today's society? And this is some of the people I came up with: drug dealers, drunkards, homeless, prostitutes, porn stars. How do we react? As you can see the pictures, these are the people I was thinking about. How do we react to these people? These marginalized people. Now, he is a terrorist. He killed lots of people. But if I saw him on the street, I think I might feel like I could go up and talk to him. But he's dangerous. These guys all ended up killing lots of people in the name of religion. These are white-collar criminals. How many of you would feel upset about meeting one of these guys on the street and talking to them? These people, they're illegal aliens, illegal immigrants. They're in the U.S. and facing deportation. These are refugees. These are some of the people who I thought of. I live downtown in Stagecoach Apartments, and it's very close to the big park, Boitono Park. And I like to walk my dog in that park. It's a beautiful park, actually. But I learned very quickly I don't like to walk my dog in the park after dark. And there have been times during the day when I've walked my dog where I get very uncomfortable. If I'm walking towards someone, I see them, I sometimes, depending on the person, choose all of a sudden, let's go a different way. And I walk a little faster, a little quicker. The park, as many of you know, this beautiful park is where you get a lot of the homeless people hanging out. There are people there who are drunkards. In fact, I have witnessed people shouting, slurring their words, and almost unable to walk out of the park because they're either drunk or high. This is the place where you can come and see people who make me feel uncomfortable, make me feel scared to be around. And I'm walking with my dog, and I worry. Maybe I'll get mugged. Maybe I'll get killed because of where I am. One thing I can't say is that I have at any time felt open and wanting to share the gospel with them. In fact, I can't even say that I want to talk with them or look them in the eye. I keep my head down, make sure my dog is close to me on the leash, and we go quickly away. I've been noticing that there is a lot of pain in the world today. One of the things that I get to see when I'm out subbing in the public schools in some of the classrooms is the children who are coming there, there's a lot of pain, a lot of sorrow. They have a lot of anger because they're afraid they're not being fed regularly. Some of them. Some of them don't have food here in Williams Lake. I was at a school where every Friday afternoon they give out what they call starfish packs, which are little backpacks that are filled with food. Why would you do that on the weekend, on Friday as they leave school? Because if those children don't bring food home with them, there is no guarantee that they're going to eat on Saturday and Sunday. In fact, these children will be served a hot breakfast, and there's an emergency lunch program, so there's always food available that you can get for these children. That was very humbling to me. I had one boy who came up to me when I was working there, and it was lunchtime, and he said, "Mr. Parker, you have to come with me." "Okay, where are we going?" "We're going to the school kitchen." "Okay, why are we going to the school kitchen?" "My father said we're broke and we don't have any food. So if I want to eat, I have to go down to the kitchen, and you have to sign for me and find me some food in the kitchen and give it to me. I can't take it myself. I need a teacher to do this for me." And of course, I went very happily down and did that and got him this food. But I'm a father of two boys. And there were times when we didn't have a lot of money in the bank or in our pocketbooks. And when I grew up, there were times I grew up and living most of my life in Fort McMurray. Food is expensive up north. Fort McMurray food is expensive. Chetwynd food is expensive. Bella Coola food is expensive. And so there were times when my parents didn't have a lot of money, and I didn't know as a kid because there was always food on the table. They somehow managed to always have food on the table. Didn't even occur to me that I might tell my own children, "We're broke, there's no food, go to school." That never occurred to me that would happen. It was one of those moments that kind of blew your mind. That in Williams Lake this exists, this is here. People are seeking to fill that sadness, that void. There's a missing piece in their lives. And a lot of the ways that we choose to do that is through self-medicating, whether that be alcohol or drugs. Others have money, and they have food, and they have lots of stuff. But there's still this sadness, this void, this pain deep inside, and so they're trying to fill it with possessions. When you look at a person, what do you see? We all quickly make judgments on what we see on the outside. We prejudge the world that we're in. I viewed a video clip, a little video movie, in preparation for this. I wanted to look at what was out there about marginalized in society. And I remember there was this Arabic, he was Arabic, because they were speaking in Arabic language, and they did the translation in English at the bottom of the screen. And so I didn't know exactly what he was saying, but I looked at it and he looked really frustrated. He's sitting in his car. It's a nice looking car. He's sitting in his car and he said, "OS ... That was the translation anyways. "I left my trunk open." Well, looking at him, he was sitting in his car. He kind of looked like me, probably maybe even 10 years younger. Certainly looked strong enough to go around and shut the car. I mean, trunk in the car. I'm like, why would that be a problem? I couldn't understand that. And he's getting more and more frustrated. You could see it on his face. And these two women who are chatting away and they're just walking down the street, he calls them over. And he says, I left my trunk open. Could you reach around and shut my trunk for me? And these women looked at him. He says, you look like a strong man. Why can't you get out of your car and go shut your trunk? You're just a creep you just wanted to talk to us. You wanted to look at us closer. We're not going to have anything to do with you. And they were complaining and talking about him as they're walking away. And he sits there for a moment, and then you see the car door open. And he swings his body around, and he's missing one leg. The pant leg was tied up really high. Now, I have two legs that work really well, but I can imagine after I've gotten myself into the car that having to get out of the car and kind of hobble my way back to shut the trunk might take a lot of effort and be painful and hard to do. And the women who were still muttering about him and saying not really nice complimentary things about this man, they looked back and they saw he had no leg and that he was trying to lever himself out of the car so that he could hobble it back to the trunk. And the look on their face was, oh. And they ran over and they apologized and they shut his trunk. That really stuck out to me. I don't know what's going on in your life. I can see you on the outside and you may look fine or you may look dirty. You may look like you're homeless. You may look like you're dangerous. Or you may look fine. But you may be dangerous. We don't know what's going on in somebody's lives. We don't know what they're capable of. We don't know them. But that's what God is asking us to do. God wants us to go to the whole world, all nations, every person. Not just the good-looking people, not the safe-looking people, all people. God wants us to make them part of the family of God. He wants us to go and teach them, make them disciples. In other words, invite them into your life. Invite them into your inner circle. Bring them to church. Bring them into your home. Be one with them. Be a part of them. That's what making a disciple is all about. Living a life with the people and showing them how to do that. That's what Philip was being asked to do. That's what we're being asked to do. What is this church? What's our motto? What's our saying? This church is about loving God, loving others, and serving the world. Loving God, loving people, serving others. My prayer for you, and it's not really for you, my prayer for me is that we open our hearts. I open my heart to allow others in. There are people so in need of hope, of help, of happiness, of love. They are in need of Christ. They need the Spirit to fill that empty hole, that pain deep inside in their soul. So let us go. Let us love God. Let us love people. Let us serve our world.